We start by introducing this woman who's here in studio now, Nicole Dyer-Griffith. Her entry into public life in Trinidad was almost a baptism of fire. We saw her as Miss Trinidad and Tobago for the Miss Universe contest that was hosted in Trinidad,
Yes.
coming the year after we won with Wendy Fitzwilliam in 1998.
Yes.
And Nicole was under tremendous amount of pressure. She held her head extremely high in 1999, represented us. After that, she went on, she would tell us in greater detail, she went on to work at Petrochin in the Human Resources Department, was it?
Employee assistance program.
Employee Assistance Program. Subsequently, she will tell us her journey. Remember her most as being very vocal in the Congress of the People. She was appointed a chairman, elected as chairman. She recently resigned, created a stir through the party, which seemed to be stable and chugging along well into kind of disarray just a few months before general elections. She's had experience in government. She's been a senator as well as a junior minister in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs she started with. She was in communications as well.
Correct.
So, Nicole, good morning and welcome to Brunch.
Good morning, Sharmain, and thank you so much for having me.
It is nice to have you. I don't know if you had a chance to partake of what we prepared, but what we prepared here in studio, we were going to ask you to partake on that. Your success story is a great one. The ideals you carried with you in COP is what folks followed you for, and you became disenchanted. All right, we can become disenchanted in things, and we keep working at it because just like a marriage, it does not work the first time. There are problems, but when you take the decision to walk out or get a divorce, as it were, it means we are looking at serious disillusionment or a feeling that this cannot be reconciled. Make clear for our listeners your decision as far as walking out and the statement you were making. A lot has been said. I am very wary of reading reports because they are paraphrased, and then the editor looks at it and changes it. So make clear for us your reason for leaving.
Well, I have given my reasons for leaving ad nauseum, but I think for this station and with you, Rennie B, whom might I just segue and add, my mother's very excited that I'm on this station because when she heard about you're going on the station with Rennie B, that apparently was something that was really dramatic to her.
Good morning, Mother, as we are excited to have you equally. So your daughter is gracing our presence this morning, and we are thankful for that too.
So I just want to take us a little way back in 2007 when the Congress of the People came on the scene. I was not really political. As Sharmain mentioned, I had come out of Miss Trinidad and Tobago, so I was in the public domain since 1999. And from that point, I was not particularly satisfied or interested or intrigued by what was being currently offered politically. And then I had my son in 2002. And after that, I started to take a little more keen interest in wanting to ensure that the Trinidad and Tobago that I was leaving for him and for his kin would be a better place and in a better position than the one I lived in. And I suppose all parents would want that for their children looking forward. And as a result of that, I started to think, how could I contribute a little bit more to ensuring that this actually takes place? And when I looked to my left and I looked to my right at what was being offered politically, it didn't really attract me. And then the COP came on the scene and started to have a different type of conversation. And the conversation that they really had politically spoke to this concept of new politics and spoke to issues about strengthening the governance process and issues around transparency and accountability in government. And I felt that this new conversation, quote unquote, was something that attracted me, and I felt safe enough to want to enter into that political genre. And as such, I submitted myself to become a member of the party when it was formed, and I entered into the realm of the electoral politics in 2007, where I ran for COP in Diego Martin Central, and that is where I came into know Sharmain and all the others around that period. And in 2007, I was unsuccessful in that seat, but we amassed quite a number of votes. I think it was somewhere over 5,000 plus votes in that area, which is considered a PNM stronghold. So that was significant in itself. A little while after that electoral foray, a few of us felt that because of the impact that we had in 2007, that we wanted to ensure that we would do something a little bit more meaningful rather than just partake in the electoral process and leave. So we developed a community-based model where we started to look at conducting a needs assessment within the community and to see how we can perhaps address some of these issues in that area, even though we were outside of the halls of government. That began to be quite successful. However, we didn't necessarily get the support of the party, being COP, that we felt we should have. And as a result, I kind of, segued my own self away from it for a while, because I felt that if it is you're really serious about wanting to connect, then you should want to connect whether you're in or you're out of government. But then I came back into the party around 2008 or 9 or so. And we started back the process of building from the ground up, utilizing different types of models. And then we had the election of 2010, where you had the Faizabad Accord and the quick marriage of all of the partners to ensure that there would be some type of electoral success. And then, of course, you had the electoral success. I ran in 2010 again for the COP in Diego Martin Central. We didn't win that seat. However, we saw a significant leap in the number of votes that was cast for the COP in each one of the Diego Martins. There are 3 Diego Martins. And in each one of those Diego Martins, the number of votes went from 5,000 plus in 2007 to 8,000 plus, almost 9,000 in 2010, which is significant and phenomenal if you were to look at the shift of electoral patterns in what is considered strongholds. Subsequent to that, and during those periods, many of the ground troops, as we call them, the persons who really work and come out and work for you on the ground, always felt that there were issues of fairness and equity in terms of how they were treated as against how other partners were treated, and the ground troops of the other partners were treated. And those were some of the issues that we had to deal with throughout. Many persons who would have sat in what the COP called the National Council meetings every Sunday, every month, would, on one Sunday a month, would know that I spoke about the issue of fairness and equity, particularly as it related to ground troops and so on. So that is nothing new and that cannot be contested. Fast forward to the issue of my resignation. I felt that during the period, we've had many ups and downs. And I also made mention about the COP remaining in partnership. Now, the COP remaining in partnership has always been a bone of contention for many of the COP members and for many of the persons on the outskirts of the party who felt that why are you continuing to be a part of this unholy alliance, as they call it, for a number of reasons. And I myself evangelized on the rationale for the COP staying with the partnership, citing the issue of if you are in government, it makes no sense leaving, being in the corridors of power to try to come back in the corridors of power. Why leave if you're there already? When you're there, you can see what can be changed. However, sometimes you have to look at things from many different perspectives, and when things seem to be going way out of control and you seem not to have the power to leverage that change, then you have to make some type of significant stand. As I told them at the National Council meeting when I left, that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result.
You were successful in convincing the executive of the COP to stay in, because they stayed in and you felt you had to get out. Mm-hmm. Now, 50 other members followed you on that. At least it is reported that 50 other members followed you on that. The reason that I'm happy that you detailed everything that led you into the COP is because we're talking about idealism. We're talking about having something you want to do for the country. A lot of people joined the COP because they shared that, because they wanted this new thrust, this new blood. Now you have left this, and it raises the question now, why should we believe those who share like minds, go into another party to do this? I mean, if you couldn't do it at such a good time in a partnership like that, tell us why we should, is the question, why we should now believe in this new one.
Mm-hmm. And, how should I address you, Rennie?
Rennie is fine. Rennie is fine.
Rennie, that is one of the reasons why when I decided to take the decision to resign, I shared it with no one. because I did not want to impose my thoughts and feelings and considerations on anyone else. It was something that I felt strongly about for a number of reasons. And in my letter of resignation, I outlined 4 of those reasons very clearly. It is something that I felt passionate about. And it is not something that I wanted any of the persons. It is no secret that many people within the West area and a few pockets across Trinidad and Tobago and I have developed a familial type relationship over the years in politics. And therefore, I did not want to burden anyone else with the feeling that, okay, well, she goes, so I have to go. That is out of the question. Everyone has to be able and free enough to make their own choices, to stand back and look at the current scenario and make their own choices. So that was my decision, and I cannot speak for anyone else. In terms of why should we decide to follow something new should it come to the table, it stems to that. Yesterday I was doing an interview and they started, circumferencing everything around Nicole Dyer-Griffith. This has nothing to do with Nicole Dyer-Griffith. I am doing what I believe in and what I think to be right. Mm-hmm. If there are other persons who are of like mind, then they're free to support whatever this evolves or morphs into. There are quite a few people who are of like mind and who felt similarly that we had the right message, we had the right image, we had the right trajectory, but somewhere along the line, we lost our way. And, so we've been having a lot of discussions and dialogues with persons who have been of like mind. And yesterday when they also asked me, so is this a new political party? The easiest thing to do is to form a political party. You register a name, you register a logo, and you get a few people and you say, we have a party. I felt that it was imperative we do it the other way around. And we continue to have this dialogue with other persons who have similar feelings about the general issues of governance, issues of transparency, accountability, and see what morphs, see what becomes, because there's so many possibilities, and I do not want to be boxed into one possibility of developing a political party. Whilst I was on this station and sitting and waiting actually for our interview, I'm interacting with persons on Facebook, and there was this young man, and perhaps he's listening, who said, well, why it is you're doing this? Because now you're going to make the opposition come into power. I mean, why do we, and my response to him is, why do we have to go to that end? You see, and that is the thing. We always tend to box ourselves into one paradigm of thinking, that if it is, we go this way, that, you have to side with the opposition. If you go that way, you have to side with the government. We need to expand our way of thinking and look at all the possibilities, because there are so many.
It is for the same reason that we're having these discussions, the demonization of people who are of different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Because you're into politics and you disagree does not mean that you don't have the interests of the country at your heart. Yeah. And that's why it's disturbing to me oftentimes when I see what can only be qualified as internecine warfare, because, you're out here to kill the other person, demonize them, and at the end of the day, the country should be central. Our guest this morning is the former chair of the Congress of the People, Nicole Dyer-Griffith. And I'm glad also that you laid this out, because the other thing that will follow on that is, did your husband, the circumstances surrounding the dismissal of your husband, have anything to do with you deciding to leave?
Sure.
Straight up.
I will go back a bit. I have heard that argument, and it was the rationale for his dismissal was one of the reasons that was laid out in my letter of resignation. The rationale. Now, there are two very different things between the rationale and the personality.
The rationale and the methodology. The way they went about it really is, from what you're saying, was a major problem.
There was an issue with it, because and you see, Rennie, if it were that because the political leader of the COP had made mention that I took things personally and this was an emotional response and so on.
Which I found rather insulting. To say that somebody's emotional makes a statement, I find it quite condescending, but that's a whole different revolution. Go ahead.
Yeah, please. And I responded to that already. But anyway, I want to take us back to those persons who may say, it is because her husband got removed why she decided to leave. I was appointed as a government senator and a parliamentary secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Communications. I was also removed from that position for whatever reason. And if it was a point where I would take things, quote unquote, emotionally and personally, it would have been at that point. Did I remove myself from government and from the COP and from continuing to do what I can for the government? No, I didn't. I continued to prod and to work and to do what I could have, how I could have, and when I could have. So those making that statement and the pronouncement that she left because of her husband, I think that's a moot point, because the point at which I should have, or I could have, was the point when I myself was personally impacted upon, and I didn't.
Nicole, I want to take it back
Sure.
to just after 2010, May 2010. Mm-hmm. COP was strong. Mm-hmm. Why did the COP lose its grip, not just on the seats that they won in Parliament, as well as, but on the corridor, because you all had a strength in the corridor coming straight out of 2010. Why was there no consistent effort to keep the party grounded, to keep it afloat, to keep it relevant to Trinidad and Tobago?
You see, the thing about COP, and I don't want to spend too much time, with COP, because COP, they have elected members now, and they can speak for and on behalf of the Congress of the People. But the thing with the Congress of the People, people have always referred to us as a knife and fork party. And, many of the persons on the ground felt that there was some measure of disconnect between the COP and the persons who really were the ones who would make the mass of an electoral type population.
But may I interject here? Because
Sure.
you pulled a significant amount of votes from the People's National Movement in the 2010 elections to make a difference.
But you're asking about why was the connect not maintained.
Yeah.
So I'm leading to that. The disconnect came about where the issue of which I spoke of earlier, the issues of fairness and equity. So that when you had this mass of persons that came from many different political orientations coming towards the COP, many of them were attracted for a number of different reasons. And some of those persons felt that issues of fairness and equity across the board was not maintained. So you started having a fallout of persons within that clique along the East-West corridor in particular because of those issues of fairness and equity. Resident within the COP as well, as you would know, Sharmain, there were also issues of internal type issues, of internal leadership issues, and so that the party has been dealing with, and well, I don't know has because I can't speak now, but during that period, the party dealt with a number of internal changes. You would recall that Mr. Dukran, there was a leadership issue with Mr. Dukran and Mr. Ramadan, and then there was the other leadership issues around the then chairman, Carolyn C. Prasad Bechan, and Mr. Ramadan, and then there was some changes in terms of the national executive, and so there were many internal issues taking place at the same time, along with the issues of persons on the outside, particularly along the East-West corridor, dealing with that issue of fairness and equity. And unfortunately, as much as we tried, and we did try, many of us did try, those issues of fairness and equity remained, were left kind of unchecked.
You said a lot of things, a lot of time has been, and we spent a lot of time because I like context, I like backdrop before we move forward.
Sure.
You talk about let's get into the future, and that's where I want to go into the future and some of the meetings that you're having right now. We're just going to move forward right now. Nicole Dyer-Griffith, and we are talking about where we go from here. You have had meetings with Jack Warner. Folks wonder what's going on with that. David Abdullah says, I'm not getting involved in that. Winston Dukran said, I have not made up my mind. Folks are talking, so your followers are asking the question, where do you really want to go with the supporters who bought into your ideal before? Are you also angling yourself for an accommodation with the PNM? And, people are asking a lot of questions. I like what you said a moment ago, and that's why I talked about demonizing. There is nothing wrong with teaming with people to make something work. It does not really matter. Politics makes strange bedfellows. We know that. But let me find out what you were thinking.
I want to agree with you, Rennie B., that in politics we need not to demonize, and that is something I think that we tend to fall into so very often. One of the key things that came out of the many dialogues that I have been having over the past couple of weeks is that issue that I think people are generally tired of hearing about the mudslinging and the backstabbing and the bad talking on either side. They're not interested in that. They are generally interested in what are you going to do for the Trinidad and Tobago? What are you going to do in the best interest of for me, for my children, for my grandchildren? What are you doing for the country to advance us, to move us forward? I'm no longer interested in who is suing who and what is suing them for. People are growing very wary of that, and those were the conversations that the COP started having along the lines. Those were the issues that the COP started to deal with and to look at. Unfortunately, I suppose, we also had fallen into that trap of demonizing. I want to be very clear. If it is we were to look across the board, the PNM brought good policies when they were in office. There were also some things that, they fell down and needed to be fixed and addressed. The UNC, when they were in office, they also brought good policies, and there were also some areas that they needed to address. And same thing with the People's Partnership. No government across the board is evil and wicked and inherently bad. However, they bring with them their strengths, they bring with them their weaknesses. And the thing about it is, when you're treating with government and issues of government, you're treating with issues of people, because there are people that you put in power. And as a result of putting people in power, you are going to have to deal with the many different facets of the human human that they bring with them. And they will bring the good, they will bring the bad. It's just a matter of how we balance that.
The disillusionment is palatable. Nobody's believing politicians anymore. I mean, that's not true, nobody. A great number of people are saying, we have heard this conversation before. We have done this three-party thing before. We have heard wonderful ideals and aspirations. Nothing is realized. And it is compounded when you have a situation that I will not even ask you to comment on right now, because that's not our discussion. But if you wait until you're in an election cycle to start promising giving out houses, and the whole system of doing it looks suspicious, not only the availability, but the geography of it, that's a whole different revolution of believability. And that is the challenge that you are going to have. How do you respond to those who say, as Brother Stalin would say, is the same old thing you're pushing?
I hear you, and I heard that conversation with many persons when the announcement of 100 houses would be given out per week. Many people questioned, well, so what happened in the last how much ever years when we had, did we have all those houses? Yeah, why wait until now, a few months before an election? However, I do trust that persons will receive houses, those who are deserving of it. To those who may be at the point of cynicism, and I would totally understand why they would be at the point of cynicism. I myself had reached that point many a time and had to question why continue. You know, just yesterday, Rennie B, and if I'm off topic, you could just bring me back, but there's so many things that I want to speak to. Yesterday, someone asked me, is this the end of Nicole Dyer-Griffith? Are we going to be seeing or hearing more of you? Are you going to ride out into the sunset? Or what's in it for you? People are saying that you're just in it for power. If I was in it for power, I would still be in the Congress of the people there, beaten up and doing whatever you could to see how you can hold on. I can leave everything from a political perspective this afternoon and be very happy and be very comfortable and not have to worry or care too much about any of these matters and issues. And so I have a child that I am very happy with. I have a family, I have a home, and we can just exist and live within a bubble. I choose not to do that. I choose to not be within that bubble of comfort and to step out and to take all the bruising and the bashing. Why? Simply because I want to see a better Trinidad and Tobago. If I want to see a better Trinidad and Tobago, how and what can I do to contribute to that? What I tried before I felt did not work in the way in which I wanted it to work, so I'm trying something else. And that is all I have to say to other persons. I am not going to promise the sun, moon, and stars. I can't, because I can't deliver the sun, moon, and stars. All I can deliver is me, one, trying to make a difference. If it is there are others who would like to try to make a difference, let's try it. But certainly we cannot give up, and we cannot just say that, well, this didn't work, so let's stop and drop and do nothing and just leave the governance of the country to whomsoever it falls into the hands of and then complain about it. That's not good enough.
There is a process that's going on here that has damaged the country, divided the country in some amazing ways. And I feel those who sow seeds of division should not be held up to anything else but scorn when you have this ethnicity, this game playing. It's a very ugly game that they win and the country loses.
Of course.
It's rather disturbing.
So before you leave us, we're closing down to the end of your half an hour. Straight up, what's its status? Is it talks? Has it reached the level of negotiations? I want you to tell us straight up, what's the status of your talks or negotiations with the ILP, with the MSJ, with the PNM, or anyone else you're talking with?
We haven't reached, because you said, we haven't developed exactly what it would look like. And as I mentioned to a few people, I don't want to be boxed into it becoming just a political party. It's very simple for that to happen. Who knows, it may become that very soon. However, we have to be very careful about how we treat with this it. We have had discussions with everybody across the board, every single person, both political and non-political, every entity, because Sharmain, I feel very strongly, and I myself have practiced the politics of exclusion, where, we're not going to talk to this one and we don't want to talk to that one. It's archaic and it's not good enough, the politics of exclusion. We need to start looking at the politics of inclusion and speaking to everyone across the board. I've heard the issues of why are you talking to ILP, or why are you talking to MSJ, or why are you talking to ABC, XYZ. They all bring with them a membership of people who reside in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, what's the status of the negotiations or the talks?
I get to that. We just had preliminary discussions. We haven't advanced anything. Right now I'm focusing on continuing this dialogue with other non-political persons per se, and then when we've gotten to the point of cementing and concretizing what this it should look like, then we're going to continue having expanded discussions across the board.
Is 2015 on your agenda?
Absolutely.
Elections 2015?
2015 is on our agenda.
And therefore you don't see what people is exactly what David Abdullah is suggesting, that the partnership came as a pickup side
Right.
in 2010, and you have even a much shorter time frame
Yes.
heading into the 2015 elections. You're going to suffer the consequences of that, no?
I can only suffer those consequences if I allow myself to be boxed in.
Okay.
Thank you
And
so much.
I choose not to.
It is to the point. We were talking for the last half hour, Nicole Dyer-Griffith. It is really a great pleasure having you here. Thank you for gracing our presence on the first show. Be not a stranger, because there are many other issues we are going to raise with you as you continue your discussion, because it is indeed, at least your statement is what I absorbed when we talk about there is a way you go about doing things. There is a degree of civility. There is a process that folks must use. Consultation must not be a word that you throw on the hustings and then it leaves you after that. Folks have to stick with the same dictionary and have the same conversation. Thank you for taking the time to be with us this morning.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.